Part two of Road Trail Runs Best of 2020. We're going to hear from Derek Lee in Singapore, Jeff Beck in Colorado, Jacob Brady in Maine, Chen in Michigan, Adam Glueck in New Hampshire, and also Road Trail Run editor Sam Winebaum, also in New Hampshire. Our year. Go ahead, Derek.
I am Derek. I'm based in Singapore. Uh, Things have been pretty good in Singapore. We've kind of got things under control at the moment. We've just started rolling out the vaccine, so that's a good news. Running wise, we haven't had any races. Everything's been cancelled, just like everywhere else, I think. Been keeping busy in terms of doing lots of virtual races. I did quite a few time trials this year just to keep things motivated. All the performances have been a bit on the slow side because my times have always been much faster in cold weather compared to Singapore weather. But I have run some pretty good time trials that I've been quite happy with. The main one I think I was quite happy with was back in April where I did a sub 36 for 10K in the Endorphin Pro, and that was the first time I'd ever gone under 37 minutes in Singapore for 10K, so that was pretty good for me. Of course, we've had a lot of time to review shoes this year because of lack of races. I've actually put in more miles this year than any other year since I started using a GPS watch by over 300 miles more than the second most prolific year, I would say. Yeah. So I'm just going to run through 3 pairs of shoes that I really enjoyed testing this year. The first one I'll show you is the Skechers Max Road 4 Plus. So the Max Road 4 came out last year. It was a fine shoe, but a lot of people had issues, myself included, with the upper. It was a bit warm and it wasn't supportive in the right areas for me. And so they came out with the 4 Plus this year, and the difference is it uses a more conventional circular knit type of upper. I really like the shoe. It really brings out the ride and lets you focus on the ride of the shoe. This is my favorite recovery shoe at the moment. I do use it for some daily runs, but I like it because it's got a lot of bounce and it's very forgiving. And it has just enough rocker to make things roll through even when you're a bit tired. So this is my first shoe that I really enjoyed. The other one that I think a lot of people know I love is the Tempo Next Percent. I've got 3 pairs of this now. I've got the Olympic colorway, I've got the black one, and I've got a gray one. So it's not often you see me spending money on shoes because we get a lot of shoes to review, but we're paying full retail for these, and I've got 3 pairs of these. So that really should say a lot about how much I like this pair. My average pace for the entire year was about 7:45 per mile. So that's just to give you an idea of what my typical daily training runs are like. It's usually about 7:45 to 8 minute mile pace. So when I'm using this shoe, even at recovery paces or just the medium pace runs, it just works really well. It's very, very cushioned. It's very, very forgiving for the longer runs. In Singapore, it can get really humid and you get dehydrated a lot in the second half of the run. And this one really helps to keep things fresh at the end of long runs. And of course, because it's a tempo shoe, it can really pick up the pace. I've had some really good progression long runs this year in this shoe. And I don't think I could have done it in any other kind of shoe. And the third shoe that I like, and this is my shoe of the year, is the Adidas Adios Pro. I think it's fair to say that this is the hardest shoe to find on the market at the moment because it's kind of sold out everywhere. Ironically, even harder to find than a pair of Vaporflies or Alphaflies at the moment. And again, very similar to the Tempo Next Percent, very, very high stack. It has the third highest stack on the market next to the Tempo and the Alphafly. And again, using it for fast runs and long runs, the cushioning really, really shows through, and you feel very, very fresh at the end of it. And a lot of people are worried about the outsole. I have about 200 miles on the outsole so far, and nothing's really bored yet. Things are looking pretty good. I actually stepped on an acorn once on the exposed midsole, and I was really worried after that. But it seems to be okay. So durability-wise, it's been quite good. Still trying to get my hands on the second pair, but it's actually quite hard to find right now. Okay, so that's it for me.
Okay, let's see. Jacob, do you want to go next? Let's
Yeah.
go back to Jeff B. Jeff, tell us about the road.
So the road, I mean, obviously the big story of the year is more and more carbon plated super shoes. And I mean, everyone's starting to kind of hit their stride on them. But for me, the fact that there weren't really any races, this was a much bigger year for trainers for me. Um, and the surprising one was the Saucony ride, because up until now, the Ride 13, up until now, the ride always seemed like it's a shoe. You know, it's not that it was never really worth talking about. I mean, it was the most Toyota Camry, Ford Taurus, just it'll get you from point A to point B, but it's they're going to sell a bunch of them because it's a perfectly fine shoe, but there was nothing exciting about it, and not that this year's version was that exciting, other than the extremely bright yellow and green and whatever. But it ran so well, and it reminded me a lot of the Triumph from about 10 years ago. Because the Triumph, I want to say, was the 9 and the 10. The midsoles of that are very similar to the Ride 13. And over time, the Triumph has gotten bigger and bigger, more cushioned. But this has good cushioning without being too much. It's the quintessential Goldilocks of plenty but not too much. And I'm a bigger runner, and I could see a number of runners, lighter runners, looking at it and going, yeah, no, that is the most I'm ever going to need. That's so it can be your great day in, day out trainer, easy day, slow day, but it also works up tempo. I don't know. I was really surprised how much I liked that shoe.
It was my daily trainer of the year. I really liked uh, what I thought was special in it was the quite thick rubber bars in the front, which with the flexibility all made it both stable and responsive, but also flexible. It's really it again. Saucony tuned up an old classic, great upper, and they just really paid attention.
Yeah, well, and so sticking with Saucony, the next shoe that again really surprised me was the Endorphin Shift. When we saw early sneaks of the three different shoes, the Pro, the Speed, and the Shift looked kind of toy-like. It didn't look like it was going to be a great shoe. Not to knock the Pro or I haven't tried the Speed, but I did review the Pro and I liked the Pro a lot. But the Shift was just fantastic, and it's weird because I like their Power Run Plus, their softer midsole, and that's just their Power Run, the firmer one, but it's a higher stack. And between that and the geometry, it really works. And earlier, end of summer, we moved from Phoenix to Denver, and we had movers on both ends to help us load up the truck, and then drove it ourselves. But there was still quite a bit of moving that we were doing, and I try not to wear active running shoes casually. I try to keep them, but it was like, what, I'm stacking the deck in my favor. Set yourself up to win here, and I had the Endorphin Shift on the whole time, and long days of boxes up and down stairs, and at the end of it, my feet felt great. And I mean, it's better as a running shoe than as a mover shoe, but it really impressed me.
Although if it had been a few months later, you might have worn those Kaha GTX despite the heat.
Yeah, no joke. Yeah, that shoe is just super cushioned. But actually, if we had moved even a month later, I likely would have had my shoe of the year, which was the Mizuno, the Wave Sky Neo. That shoe is awesome. It takes the Triumph or the Glycerin or the normally the Vomero, that big daily trainer that like a runner like you might think, okay, this is my easy day, my recovery, where a runner like me goes, yeah, that's day in, day out. And they just got it right. It's funny because it's heavy, it's expensive, it's hard to get, and it's worth it. It is because I had to import this pair from England because for some reason they decided the U.S. didn't want to get this shoe, and I had reviewed the previous because the Wave Sky 4 is the current. I reviewed the 3, and from what I can tell, the difference between the 3 and the 4 isn't much, but the difference between those and the Neo is substantial, and so much of it is the massive amount of energy, which is not a great name, but it is a great midsole. But the upper works well. The outsole has plenty of traction, but there's still a decent amount of flex. But that midsole material has an amazing amount of bounce to weight ratio. It works really well. I was very impressed with that shoe, and continue every time I'm like, what if I don't have any shoes that I'm actively reviewing? It's like, well, this is what I'm running in.
Cool. I've got to go. I'm gonna hang on.
I'm almost done. But to wrap up my year, obviously it's been a very strange one for all of us, and it was really weird for me because I entered this year right off of a 50-mile ultra I spent all of 2019 running or training for. So suddenly I had nothing to train for, and I was trying to figure out what my next thing would be, and then COVID came and everything got canceled. But I did get to pace my friend at that one what Black Canyon Ultras in February. But it was definitely a weird year, and it was at times hard to stay motivated and keep running with nothing on the horizon, especially a year removed from working with a coach, working with Dave Ames, and having every single day mapped out. Today I'm doing 7 miles, today I'm doing 19 miles, today I'm doing speed work, and suddenly it's like, what am I doing? And it was actually really helpful having a number of shoes to review. So if you're like, well, I don't really feel like running today, but I need mileage. So and when we moved up to Denver, it was in the first 4 days we were here, we had 100 degrees and we had snow. And I'm told that is absolutely par for the course. Luckily, we did pick up a pretty good treadmill for down here in the basement. So when things get too bad, I can always log some miles there. But it's definitely been an interesting year, and I'm looking forward to what 21 brings.
So Jacob Brady in Portland is up next. Hey, Jacob in Portland, how's it going?
Great. Thanks for setting up the call. All right, so I'll start off with just a quick overview of my year in running. So I started out the year training for the Boston Marathon before it was canceled. It was going to be my first time running it. I qualified in 2019, and I did a couple of the highest mileage weeks I've ever done. And then throughout that, I was thinking, oh, it's probably going to get canceled, but I kept training until I knew it was going to get canceled. And then I lowered my mileage and have no more structure since then, but had a great time testing shoes and just running every day. So I kept my running streak through 2020, and now I'm at nearly 1,000 days in a row. And I was consistent and had fun despite not having any official races. And there were some really great shoes, some of my favorites of all time, released in 2020. So I'll start out with my pick for the shoe of the year, which is my now very well-worn New Balance Fuel Cell TC. This shoe, it's my favorite long run shoe of all time, and one of my favorite overall shoes of all time, though I typically use it for long runs. I feel like it just allows me to run without effort in the similar way to the carbon plated racing shoe, except more relaxed and less aggressive. So it's more fluid running, and it just really felt like I didn't have to try. And I did some of the fastest like 20-mile runs I've ever done where I wasn't caring about pace or looking at my watch. It was just going out and cruising along, and then I'd see my pace at the end and just couldn't believe that was how fast I was going. So every run in this shoe I really enjoyed, and I think it's the highest mileage I got on a shoe this year as well. So that's my overall pick. And then some other remarkable ones. I think when I get high mileage on a shoe, having such a large rotation of shoes to choose from, then it's telling for what I thought of it. So I went back and I looked at my top mileage shoes, and number 2 for road shoes was the Asics Nova Blast, which was also I received to test early in 2020. And the Nova Blast is I had some issues with fit, but it didn't hamper my enjoyment of the shoe. I love the bouncy and propulsive ride. It has a really dramatic bounce, and it's a different way than a plated shoe where it's less directed, but it feels more powerful, sort of like maybe because there's no plate, you have more depth of depth of foam in the forefoot, especially. So it just, it's a unique ride. And I think probably the overall most bouncy shoe I've ever run. And this thing worked for me for every type of run except for short, fast workouts. So I just would choose it and randomly see it on my shelf and then be glad I did and have a blast. And then last road shoe I have is another trainer, the Saucony Freedom 3. I've been running in this one now for over a year, and I still run in it. Maybe not weekly, but at least a couple times a month. I really like the Freedom 3 again because of the bouncy midsole, which is the case on all 3 of my picks of shoes for this year. I liked the soft and bouncy midsole style. This shoe is really fun to run, very flexible. It's the most flexible shoe I think I've ever worn, more so than the Nike Free Iron Distance, which was one of my favorite trainers a few years ago. And aside from running in this, which I did a variety of, this was just like sort of a random day, not sure if I'd go fast or slow and not have a planned shoe. And aside from runs like that, I also did a bunch of walking in this, or I'd just wear it to go out if I didn't know what I was going to be doing. Maybe if I thought I might be running, if I was going somewhere and only bringing one shoe, because it has a great outsole that's held up well and has great grip. So in the slightly snowy roads, it did all right actually. And also that's probably the most comfortable shoe that I have currently, and that really increased its enjoyment. It's the soft and foot conforming upper. So those are my road shoes.
Thank you. What we're gonna do, I can hear you fine. Go
Okay,
ahead.
just making sure. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So yeah, for 2020 is actually pretty interesting for me. This is actually, for me, it was about my first to second real year to be able to train in terms of mostly running. I'm actually pretty new to the sport. I've only been running up to this point for about 1.5 to 2 years ish, but did manage in that time to try out a lot of shoes and hang out with you guys and things like that. So the lockdown actually, I think, treated me pretty well because it was the first time that I got to consistently be over 50 miles a week, training for things, and actually was able to do 3 in-person solid real races. Yeah, and it was through that I was able to break 1:30.5. It's nothing too impressive in terms of time and speed, but for I suppose in terms of coming from a new training perspective, it was a big goal that I was going after. And the 3 main shoes and products that helped me in that process is these 3. So it just happened to all be similar in color. This is the Alpha Fly, and there's a funny story with that. This is the Escalante Racer, the Ultra Escalante Racer. Specifically, I think it's actually their updated version, and that fixed a lot of things in terms of the original Escalante that I train a lot. Of course, this is the Tarthur Edge, the A6 Tarthur Edge, and I think that these 3 shoes actually all, even though are very, very different, there is a string that kind of attaches them together in terms of how the training work together and how the shoe works. But in terms of any other gear, the main thing that I used in terms of GPS was just this. It's the Phoenix 5X. It's a really heavy thing. I don't recommend it for anybody. If you I think the new version, the 6X is great. The 5X is very, very heavy, but I use it for much more than running, a lot of backcountry stuff, diving, lifting, and all sorts of other things. So if you do that, kind of makes sense, but otherwise it's a little too heavy. So in terms of the Escalante Racer, maybe I'll start with that. I think that this was just a very good platform to use, because one of the biggest issues with was the Escalante, and I think even up to the most recent version, was that the upper, is constantly slipping. It's very hard to have like a solid upper that holds your foot. And I remember years ago when I was just recreationally running a tiny bit, I would read reviews like Rail Trail Run and things, and people would talk about uppers. I'm like, oh, it's so important about the upper. But now I think that uppers are actually very, very important. How well the heel is able to actually grab you, and I think that this shoe takes everything about the Escalante and made it even better by making it very securely grabbing your foot, etc. But just to make it a little bit nicer and a little more plush, I actually took the insole from the Ultra Torin 4 Plush. This one is a different kind of insole, and put it and replace the one that's in here to make it just to ride a little bit more plush and a little bit, easier when the mileage is higher. So I like sometimes fooling around with insoles a little bit. And this one is the Asics Tarthur Edge. I think there was a whole review on Road Trail Run for this. The biggest feature about this is, of course, the whole DSP. I think that DSPs nowadays is very hard to find. Everybody's kind of moving away from that a little bit, but it's still pretty unique and pretty interesting. It's very snappy, and even though it looks like it's very, very thin in its midsole, the amount of cushioning that comes from this is truly amazing, and it's very difficult to tell just visually. But the heel lockdown inside of this little cup area, it's actually very stiff than a heel counter. It just grips you very, very well, and it makes you feel as if it's just like a second skin kind of feeling. And that's something that I think is very rare among a lot of shoes, to have that that kind of feeling where the shoe disappears from the sensation of your foot and just feels kind of natural. But the third thing, of course, is the Alpha Fly. This is the watermelon edition, and I was mentioning that I think there is a string that attaches all these three shoes, and that is specifically when you run more forefoot, midfoot to forefoot landing, and also more laterally landing, and you're trying to develop all this biomechanical strength to toe off, to power yourself, to really like to not just leave immediately, but really toe off and really push off by running these more flats and more racing flats of shoes. I think that actually works really well with specifically the Alpha Fly, or possibly what Derek mentioned, the what was that, the trainer version of it. So it was the Tempo Next Percent, right? The Tempo Next Percent. I think they actually work really well together, right? The Tempo Next Percent, because by having these little pods in front, if you're able to not just land and just like step off, even if you have like a high cadence, by putting a lot more pressure up front, you really quote, activate these pods, and it really brings out an additional pop, an additional responsiveness to an otherwise really plush shoe. And so it seems really like it's a big dichotomy between racing flats and this giant plush ride. But by training in that and racing this, I think it actually really came well together. And so that I from my perspective, these shoes, they definitely had a huge performance boost. And the funny story behind that was in my first attempt to break 130, I failed, and the person who beat me one step, I think I was in fourth place or something. The third place person was in these shoes, and I was just in the Vaporflies. I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta get these things. And so got these, broke 130, and now definitely in the running game in terms of consistently putting on mileage. And so 2020 has been very weird, but I think I'm very grateful and very glad that I was able to actually do races and really get into this whole running game.
Thanks, Cheng. Yeah, the Alpha Fly is definitely Interesting. I haven't quite wrapped my head around my pair, but I definitely have wrapped my head around the Tempo Next percent. That's a very interesting, effective shoe.
Yeah.
I agree with Derek on that. Great. Okay, so let's if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go quickly and do my road shoes of the year. So we got all the road stuff together. Um, my top shoe of the year uh, was the Adios Pro. Um, and the reason I selected as top shoe of the year is because it has a wonderfully more natural ride in a kind of super shoe orientation because of the energy rods, which you can see through the sole. So it's more kind of natural feeling. You kind of feel your toes working or not completely bound up with the with a full plate. So there are 5 of them in there. The upper is magnificent. And then this outsole, and this pair I don't have a lot of miles on, is a truly remarkable innovation because it just doesn't wear. You wouldn't think that such a thin material, and I won't even call it rubber because who knows what it is, would be so effective. So actually the outsole and the energy rods are 2 of my tech of the year in the shoe game, along with this incredible upper. In terms of road shoes, there are 2 that really stood out for me. This, the Mach 4, which is coming out early in 2021, but we tested it extensively, and it proved one of the favorite shoes of the crew. You might say it's more kind of a recovery shoe. It's very, very light. It has the rubberized foam thick layer here, which is actually the outsole, midsole, and then the ProFly above. And as with all very recent Hokas, the upper is outstanding. They used to struggle with uppers, but no longer. They've all been magnificent. And the other thing I'm noting is that Hoka definitely has changed their rocker profile. And we actually get some flex in this shoe, which is the same stack height 29-24 as the Clifton. If you think back to older Cliftons, very, very little flex whatsoever. I always found you had to kind of pop straight up. Now we've got some flex and a new rocker profile. It's also in the Clifton Edge and the Arahi. So a new geometry. Doesn't look much different, but is. And then as a daily trainer for road, I really struggled with which one. I like the Pegasus Women's 37 a lot, and there were some others that were fantastic this year, but the Saucony Ride 13, if you think of a daily trainer as kind of the reliable partner for just about everything, was my daily trainer of the year. Notable, I think, in this shoe are the big bands of rubber up at the front. While it remains flexible, those thick bands provide lots of pop and response and stability. So that was my daily trainer shoe of the year. Now we're going to go to Cheng in Michigan.
So this was definitely an interesting year for road shoes for me. So just briefly before I talk about shoes, generally when I road run, I'm not a huge road runner. I love the trails, the mountains. I like how there's curves and bumps and things to run around. So when I go on the road, it's usually for a reason. And that reason is because I want to go fast. So based on that, I have an interesting dilemma because usually when I want to go fast, that means I want the lightest, thinnest, most responsive shoe I can get. But also that really beats me up and that kind of hurts. So I'm trying to figure out how I can run fast on the road, or even if I'm going for an easy day, I still don't want to feel like I'm running on a pillow that takes all of the energy I put into the ground and doesn't give it back. So this was the first year where I really tried some road shoes that had a little bit more cushion and found ones that were responsive enough for me to enjoy. Also, the first year I tested out a shoe for shoe. So my road shoe of the year, undoubtedly, without a contest, is the Saucony Endorphin Pro, which is, to be fair, the first super shoe I've tested, but I am completely sold on the concept of having a larger chunk of a bouncy responsive foam combined with carbon fiber plate, even without the carbon fiber plate. But just the foam is nice to have something that's light but also responsive. As you can see, I run a bit of dirt on this as well because just paved would be too boring. But I found the durability to be excellent. Put a lot of miles on this and still seems to be very responsive. The upper is thin but holding up well, doesn't have any rips or tears. The upper is very comfortable. I would prefer it if it had slightly better heel hold. I'd definitely add a couple of grams of weight for that. But like this shoe is pretty close to perfection for me. And I think if Saucony slightly updates the upper in the second version, literally if they took the upper off the Kinvara 12, this would be pretty much the perfect racing shoe for me. I just like the fact that I can go out running with this and it makes me run faster. I accidentally will go do well on Strava segments, accidentally set PRs in like a 5K while running a 10K, things like that. Like even on track for really short distances, I love having something that's bouncy and responsive and fast and fun to run in. So there's that. Another shoe I actually have been pleasantly surprised by, which I just got into test, so I didn't end up including it in my previous year-end write-up, is the Topo Cyclone. I hadn't run in Topo that much before, especially for road, because I usually found that their shoes were, at least the uppers were a little bit clunky, but I really like this upper. It is super thin and lightweight. Reminds me a lot of the Endorphin Pro upper, actually. And there's this, the rubber in the forefoot is pretty thick, but that ends up creating some of a snap. This is not a plated shoe. In fact, I think it's an unplated version of the Zephyr, but gives a nice snap because of that rubber in the forefoot. And based on that rubber as well, seems like it will wear. So part of me is like, I would love to just go and wear the Endorphin Pro every single day, but as well as not being super economical, it probably isn't good for my biomechanics to always be training and running around in something with a plate. So I will wear the Endorphin Pro for the days where I like to go fast. And then for a lot of training runs, this is pretty excellent. It's protective enough, but still a responsive shoe, which is pretty much a requirement for something I like actually running on the road.
Talk about road. So Beto's up next, and you gals can stay.
Hello, Sam. Well, I'm gonna talk about my favorite road shoes of this year. You know what I'm gonna say, but let's start with my long run shoe. First of all, 2020 was about plated shoes. Everyone has to get a plated shoes. I don't know why, but everyone has to get a plated shoe with a lot of stack height for the long run. And I try a lot with plated shoes. Like Fuel Cell TC was one of my favorites. Obviously, the Saucony Endorphin Speed and Endorphin Pro. The Vaporfly, which is last year's, but it still is a really good shoe. I really enjoy it for the long run. But when it comes to normal shoes, a shoe that really stand out to me was the 1080 V10 from New Balance. I went through two pairs, so I'm gonna give it to the New Balance 1080 because I don't know, they made it lighter with a Fresh Foam X. It's like light and at the same time not that squishy, not like the type of Ultra Boost, that you feel like you're sinking in. So I really enjoyed the 1080 V10. Has enough rubber, for wet roads when it's raining, because where I live there's a lot of humidity, so rains a lot, and it really held well on the road. My legs didn't get beat up, especially with that shoe. I don't know why, and that's why I really enjoyed the 1080 V10. I didn't put it on my top three because at first, at the 2020 Road to Trail Run review, but I wanna give it a thumbs up to that shoe because I can't wait to try the V11. The V11, it's like I think they make the little things that I didn't like about the version 10. I think they made it a little bit better, so I can't wait to get my hands on a pair. And so I'm gonna give that to the long road shoe. And for my
Go ahead. Yeah.
what? Yeah, and for my go-to shoe, the shoe that I always have to have, I'm gonna give that a special mention to the Freedom 3. I'm a Saucony Freedom 1 Freedom ISO one, the first iteration of that shoe. I really enjoyed it. I loved it so much. So I used the number two, the ISO two. I didn't like it that much, but the ISO three for me was like a little bit of a game changer because they made a little bit more stable the heel. And then uh, I like the ISO fit. Nobody liked the ISO fit. I don't know why. Nobody wanted. I really liked it because I have a wide foot, so I think I don't know. I think I stretched enough the ISO fit that I really held my foot in place, so I didn't feel it, all wobbly or unstable. In my case, a lot of people say I'm feeling like I'm already sleeping. It didn't hold my midfoot correctly, and in my case, it wasn't for me. I really enjoyed it. So the new form fit upper, it's amazing. I really enjoyed it. It's like a really big jump for Saucony, the form fit upper. I don't know. They made the Freedom 3 like sport cars with luxury. I don't know how to if I explain myself correctly. Because it's very comfortable. I really enjoy how comfortable the heel country is and the inner lining of the shoe. And the power and plus, it's amazing. It's like getting always better and better. I don't know. It has like maybe 200 miles my shoe right now, and it's like in mint condition. The midsole is perfect, still in perfect condition.
I was very
So
impressed with the wear or what little wear you have on your Endorphin Pro. I was looking at the pictures for your review of that. They're pretty amazing. And did that fit you okay?
yeah, the Endorphin Pro actually I only use it for the long run,
Okay.
not for like 10Ks or 15Ks when I'm training or tempos. Well, yes, sometimes in tempo runs, but I prefer on the long run where I have to warm up like maybe like 5 miles and then 10 miles at tempo pace and then cool down with 2 miles. That's where I use the Endorphin Pro. When you see it like for example, when you got it in your hand, in my case, I supinate, so most of the damage I always get it in the little corner of the outer side of the shoe,
Hmm.
especially on the not on the heel, but like going through the midfoot.
Okay.
It's the more visible wear that I have in the front in the front, like in the midfoot, going through the toes. It has a little bit of wear, but it's like super tiny. If you see it, if I take a picture of a brand new pair, because I have a brand new pair like fresh for racers when they arrive next year, hopefully. When you see it next face to face, you can see the wear. It's actually there, but I really enjoy that it's like I don't feel that the power and P beats like getting I don't know, and it's not losing the resiliency of the midsole. It's like on point, still on point. Like I feel like it's still brand new, but the outsole it's holding pretty well, like pretty well. I've seen shoes on Instagram or maybe some other reviews that they put like I don't know, maybe like 300 or 400 miles, and they start getting a little the lining of the rubber of the outsole. It's like they're getting like really marked where they land. And in my case, because I think I supinate, my foot tends to get into a neutral position more. That's why I think the rubber it's like degrading like in the same way. It doesn't mark like to the left or to the inner side, to the outer to the inner side. I think I'm getting it, correctly, except on the endorphin speed.
Really?
The endorphin speed. I don't know if it's me or anybody. I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody that has this problem with endorphin speed. I really enjoyed it. I really love the shoe, but that shoe tends to mark on my toe off. I have a lot of wear on my toe off.
That might be the somewhat increased flexibility, so you're
Yeah,
bending and abrading more.
exactly. Because I think in Endorphin Pro, I'm like landing
Yeah.
on my midfoot and then
Boom.
doing this.
Yep.
Yes, and with the endorphin speed, I feel like just a little bit of sinking and then flex, boom. So I think I'm getting more into my toe, on my big toe, than on the Endorphin Pro, because the Endorphin Pro, if you see the pictures, if you zoom in to the outer side, I'm getting more wear on the outer side of the toe of the, you can say, the pinky toes.
Yeah.
You can see a little bit more wear in that part, and in Endorphin Speed, no, I get more on the inner side. I
Great.
was like, I'm pronating or something, because I'm not a pronator. I don't have nothing against that, but like, I'm pronating with that shoe. It's unstable, and no, it's stable enough. But the problem is that little flex tends to give me like a more natural type of running.
So
That's why I loved it so much.
tell us just briefly about your year in running. You've had some pretty fast going on some of these new shoes.
Yes, yes. In actually, since last year, when carbon plated shoes starting to arrive, especially with a Vaporfly. Now that the Endorphin Pro came out, I don't know if it's the shoes or it's my fitness. I don't know, but every time I wear the Endorphin Pro, I can do a half marathon in less than 140 easily. I can go easily, and I'm like, okay, it's the shoes. I give it a try with Endorphin Speed, same result. I give it a try with the
Next.
with the next. Actually, with the next, I can go a little bit faster.
Yeah.
The only problem that I have with the next, it's that it always my pinky toe always pays the price with
Okay.
the Vaporfly. I don't know why.
It's probably the stiff, maybe the shape of the plate. Great,
Yeah.
great. So I'm going to move to Jeff Beck now. Thank you, Beto. Thank you, thank you.
Just a reminder.
Oh,
the
yeah.
crown goes to the Endorphin Speed. Sorry, Endorphin Pro, but
Yeah.
goes
Well,
to the
that was
Endorphin
the
Speed.
shoe of the year for the road testers. No, there was some discussion, but by absolute vote, that was it.
Yeah.
So
It's the shoe that everyone needs to have.
cool. Thank you very much for watching, and check out our other two year-end videos. And we hope you'll have a great 2021 on wherever your roads and trails lead.